The majority of American civilians own and buy arms, and anyone who is at odds with civilian firearms ownership always receives some form of backlash. Even at the height of mass shooting incidents, most American gun owners are still adamant that it's not the guns that are the problem, which, in a sense, tells us that a gun ban is not the solution to these streaks of violence within our states and communities. On the flip side, those who support gun control feel that civilians should be restricted from owning destructive, highly potent, military guns, whatever those things mean. With due respect, all guns, when used irresponsibly, can cause destruction, one way or another. But hey, let's backtrack a little and tackle this question. Is there really a difference between the guns used by militaries and law enforcement agencies and those used by ordinary folks like you and me? What's up, everyone? This is your boy Ted from Line 45. In this episode, I'm going to discuss the categorical distinctions of firearms and see if it's appropriate to label them as civilian or military in the first place. Whether you are a pro-gun control activist or a gun ownership supporter, I urge that you watch this video until the end. Before we get underway, please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons. I know it is a chore, but these simple clicks help my channel immensely. Now let's return to the video. In the American political arena, there's this proliferating idea that guns should be categorically distinguished as either civilian or military. Whether you believe it or not, it's not just those politicians that harbor this kind of notion. Some Americans also believe that some guns should never be allowed in the commercial market because their specifications are too military. By saying this, there's this oversimplification that the firearms used by the armed forces, tactical operatives, or three-letter agencies are too destructive for civilian use. Or, we could also flip the narrative here. If the guns in your collection display extreme firepower and ballistic capabilities, they should be identified as military firearms and no longer civilian. And if you are a civilian, you have no right to possess any tools that could yield destructive outcomes to lives and properties. Now, do I believe this argument? Not really. I already mentioned that it's not about the guns, but the ones who use them. I have been a gun owner for almost 4 decades already, and I haven't scratched a human skin while shooting firearms. In the same manner, you can't just assume that a person who doesn't own a gun is peaceful just because he isn't armed. That's a foolish way to get yourself defenseless. In the grand scheme, distinctions among firearms are pretty loose. Even if you don't believe me, the historical records will tell you otherwise. In the United States alone, there's a grand overlap between the guns used by militaries and the guns used by ordinary folks. Some weapons that were originally designed for public consumption were eventually adopted by the military. The Remington 700, for example, is one hell of a popular bolt-action rifle for civilians due to its reliability and accuracy. The United States Army took a liking to this rifle and turned the Model 700 into the M24 sniper weapon system. In fact, the M40 sniper rifle of the U.S. Marine Corps is also derived from the Model 700. Of course, this is not the only gun I can think of. The Colt 1911 became the M1911, which became the standard-issue firearm of the U.S. military for the World Wars. Even the AR-15 was originally designed by Armalite for civilian use, but because of its modularity and versatility, Uncle Sam made the AR-15 into the M16, and this one already includes fully automatic firing capabilities. The point here is that civilian guns can become a military tool on short notice, and most of the time, the transition doesn't really require the guns to be fully augmented. Just because a particular firearm was chosen by the military doesn't mean that it will have otherworldly upgrades. They will not immediately get a grenade launcher or some kind of customization that would enable them to shoot with lethal precision. In fact, the guns will most likely maintain their original configurations. If there are tweaks, they are just minimal. Of course, the things that I have just said lead to one conclusion, and that military guns aren't technically more powerful than their civilian counterparts. Both may function the same and yield distinctly similar ballistic results when you test them simultaneously. The differences aren't that apparent on the surface, given that the characteristics of a military gun may also be present in those that were made for regular gunners. But here's where things get a little tricky. There's always this possibility that distinctions can be made through legislation. A particular law can potentially define the qualities that would make a gun a military firearm. The National Firearms Act of 1933, for example, had imposed restrictions on the ownership and transfer of certain types of firearms, including machine guns, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, suppressors, and destructive devices. I also remembered the federal assault weapons ban, which was in effect from 1994 to 2004. If my memory serves me right, this federal law has prohibited the manufacture, transfer, and possession of certain semi-automatic firearms, defined as assault weapons, as well as magazines that could hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition. The reason why semi-automatic variants of AK-47 and AR-15 were banned was due to this legislation. I don't want to delve that deeply into how this law classified an assault weapon, but in retrospect it somehow targeted those with folding or telescoping stock, long rifles with pistol grips, threaded barrels, and bayonet mounts. So, the point here is that the categorization by guns can be formalized by laws and the things that our politicians pass in Congress. So, if you elect someone who has clearly no idea of what they are doing, there's a good chance that even a simple .22 long rifle handgun can be classified as an assault weapon. But if you really think about it, these laws may not mean a damn thing. After all, the Second Amendment has given American civilians the ability to possess and utilize military firearms. I am not trying to be extremely argumentative here. All I am saying is that any law that opposes the Second Amendment is unconstitutional. Some people just don't get it at all. Both intellectually honest supporters and critics of gun control must acknowledge the point I am trying to make here. For gun control advocates, what I am saying can be irksome because it implies that all the measures they consider appropriate, such as an assault weapons ban, are clearly unconstitutional. If the courts remain true to the Constitution, these measures these gun control proponents are pushing would really require a constitutional amendment to become legal. But let's return to our primary topic first, as it seems that I am trying to dodge a bullet here. Is there really no difference between military and civilian firearms? Well, technically there could be. I can set the mode of fire of these weapons as an example. You see, military firearms are often manufactured to possess fully automatic or burst fire modes, allowing soldiers to fire multiple rounds with a single pull of the trigger. Keep in mind that even the most advanced of civilian assault rifles are only set in semi-automatic mode. The military configurations of the M16 and AK-47 let their users switch between semi-automatic, burst, and fully automatic modes. The reality here is that those automatic firearms are heavily regulated. Anyone who knows their guns are aware of this fact. Fully automatic guns are generally illegal for civilian ownership without special licenses, which are mandated by laws such as the National Firearms Act. But then again, my point still stands. You don't need a fully automatic weapon to cause harm to others. It's the person behind the trigger, and not really the gun. Another difference that I can think of is in their magazine capacity and the type of ammo they use. Military arms often use specific calibers and ammunition types optimized for combat effectiveness, such as the 5.56 NATO or 7.62 rounds. Additionally, they typically feature high-capacity magazines to reduce the need for frequent reloading in combat. On the other hand, civilian firearms use a variety of calibers, some of which overlap with military use, like the .223 Remington, which is a similar cartridge to the 5.56mm NATO. But of course, we are all aware of the fact that the magazine capacity of civilian firearms is limited by law. For instance, in some states in the country, such as California, civilian magazines are limited to 10 to 15 rounds. Military firearms often come with a range of accessories tailored for combat scenarios, including night vision scopes, suppressors, grenade launchers, and tactical lights. These accessories enhance the weapon's versatility and effectiveness in various combat situations. Yes, these accessories are also available to civilians. However, their usage inclines toward recreation or self-defense. Moreover, certain items, like suppressors, are regulated and require special permits. The level of customization available to civilians is vast, but the way I see it, they are generally oriented to cater to personal preferences of their owners, rather than combat readiness. I am not saying that civilian gun owners just buy these accessories for recreation or fun, but in most cases they really are. You would rarely see people upgrade their guns because they are planning to engage in actual combat. Self-defense is just on the horizon, But even that isn't the primary reason why folks attach accessories to their firearms. So there you have it. These are actually the distinctions that I could think of between military and civilian firearms. But as you can see, most of these supposed differences are not entirely absolute. There's still an overlap between the two, and in reality, as I've mentioned earlier, categorizing guns doesn't mean that much. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more gun videos like this, just click the subscribe button and notification bell. Take care and stay safe.